For more, let's cross live to Juliette, Touma, Director of Communications at UNRWA in Amman. Many thanks for joining us on the programme. It's very good to see you today. First of all, what more can you tell us about the visa situation with Israel at the moment?
Well, thanks for having me. We are seeing a pattern that has increased over the past few weeks and months where there is either no visa from the Israeli authorities to members of the non-governmental organizations, or the visas are much, much shorter to United Nations officials. In the case of our principal, Philippe Lazzarini, he has not received a visa for more than 3 months now, which means that he cannot go to the occupied West Bank and visit our teams. In addition to that, he's banned from going into Gaza. He's not been allowed to go into Gaza since January this year.
And what exactly is the legal justification for imposing such restrictions?
Oh, that I don't know. It's not a question to us. It's a question that I think you need to ask to the government of Israel. All we are asking for is to be allowed in, because guess what? The humanitarian needs on the ground in Gaza, but also increasingly in the West Bank, are huge. And we need more humanitarian workers, not less.
So explain to us how these restrictions are going to affect UNRWA's work in the region.
About UNRWA, it's about the humanitarian community by and large, so members of the non-governmental organizations, other United Nations sister agencies, including the World Health Organization, UNICEF, OCHA, among others, UN Women. So we're not alone in this. We just put out a statement ourselves about it yesterday, hence the attention. But what is clear is that there are restrictions on entry to Gaza and also to Israel. And that, yes, it does stand in the way of delivering humanitarian assistance to the people who need us most in the middle of a war.
And could you talk about the Palestinians' needs and how they will be affected by this, especially now that they're dealing with the threat of a polio outbreak amid this humanitarian disaster already after almost 1 year of war?
Look, I'm not sure I can do any justice to what's happening to the people of Gaza. Almost 1 year in this brutal war, having seen it myself firsthand, the suffering is absolutely immense. People are moving from one place to another due to these forced displacement orders that the Israeli authorities continue to issue. Some people have moved 9, 10. We met someone who told us, I moved 14 times in 10 months. People have nowhere to go, no place is safe, and there's meanwhile very, very little supplies that the Israeli authorities are allowing into Gaza. So little things that we all take for granted, that the people of Gaza, by the way, have all taken for granted. Things like soap or clean water are not available, or if they are, then they're very, very pricey, very expensive, and many people cannot afford them anymore. So that helped in creating that perfect storm, if you wish, for diseases to come back, including, to your point, polio.
And of course, for those humanitarian workers who are able to access Gaza to work there, there's a physical risk as well. We understand that the IDF recently attacked a UN convoy on its way to support the polio vaccination campaign in northern Gaza. What more can you tell us about that particular incident?
Well, in general, I'd say Gaza has very, very fast become one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a humanitarian worker in. Only at UNRWA, the agency where I work, we have lost more than 220 colleagues of ours, team members, including most recently in an attack that the Israeli forces launched on one of our shelters in the middle areas, where we lost in one go 6 team members. And to your question on that particular convoy, yes, the convoy was heading from the middle areas to northern Gaza to oversee the polio vaccination campaign, and it was held at gunpoint. Our teams were stopped for up to 8 hours. They were questioned. There were threats by the Israeli forces at a checkpoint there to arrest colleagues of ours, and we had to turn back, and there was severe damage made to our cars. These are very, very expensive cars, armored cars that are very difficult to get into Gaza. So, a lot of damage was done to those cars, but we were able to go back safely, most importantly, to the base without any physical harm to the teams. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be down to luck or a miracle or someone's mood on a checkpoint to decide. These are humanitarian workers on their way to undertake a humanitarian mission. All we're saying is allow us to do our work in Gaza and wherever we are needed around the region and across the world.
So, aside from the physical threats and the visa restrictions, just describe to us how difficult it is for you and your colleagues to continue carrying out this humanitarian work in Gaza. It seems like it's becoming almost impossible.
Very, very difficult. One of the most difficult places to be a humanitarian in right now is Gaza, because of the different complexities, because no place is safe, and because of the challenges and the restrictions imposed on us. It is absolutely time, in fact, long, long overdue to have a ceasefire that will bring respite to people in Gaza who have been through an endless nightmare for the past year, a respite for the people of Israel that would also release the hostages that are held currently inside Gaza unconditionally, and that will bring a flow of humanitarian supplies on a regular, normal basis into Gaza. We're talking about the very, very minimum and the very basic. We're talking about food and hygiene supplies, very basic things that any human being needs.
You know, it's not the first time that Israel has implemented restrictions on humanitarian work in Gaza. The visa issue is just the latest. Talk us through the wider ramifications of such a move during this crisis, and how do you feel about the lack of international attention towards this?
I think there is quite a lot of international attention to this ongoing carnage that has been going in Gaza for almost a year now. Unbelievable number of civilians reported killed, among them aid workers, UNRWA and outside of UNRWA, journalists, medical workers, including nurses and doctors. So there's been quite a lot of attention. What I would say is not there is action from the international community to implement Security Council resolutions, including one on a ceasefire. What more needs to be done is more pressure on the Israeli authorities to let international journalists, as one example, go into Gaza and report firsthand what is happening to the people of Gaza. It's been almost 1 year. International journalists are not allowed to go in and report freely. So much more needs to be done, also to put pressure on parties to the conflict to reach a deal that will bring a ceasefire, because people are exhausted, understandably, 1 year on, that would also release the hostages that are held in Gaza, that will bring also a free flow of humanitarian supplies critical for the survival of human beings in Gaza.
What options are there for the Palestinian people when it comes to international aid? If groups like UNRWA and other UN agencies are being prevented from doing their job in Gaza, what options do they have available?
People depend on humanitarian relief items and organizations like UNRWA for their sheer survival. This is precisely why organizations like UNRWA need to be supported now, much more, not less. And there should be the time, the space allowed for us to do our work. What we do is very basic. We have shelters where we give refuge for people who have been forced to flee their homes or their place of refuge over and over. It's around 150 shelters where we host people have been displaced, and there we provide them with services that includes the delivery of food, the delivery of clean water, and primary healthcare. Very basic humanitarian. All we're asking is allow us to do our job, and please work towards, very seriously, work as parties to the conflict towards arriving to a ceasefire.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I've got so much respect for the work that you do. Thank you so much, Juliette Touma, Director of Communications at UNRWA in Amman. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.